Welcome to the Underdog Sniper Podcast. I am your host, MGCovers. This is episode 52. Greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. Quick apology. You want to get this podcast out on Mondays, but had my first big internet outage here in the Dominican yesterday. So internet was down for about 3 hours and came back. Everything's good to go. Good to go this morning, but majority of the time, we're going to try to get this out on Mondays. All right. So let's review our lineup and what we're going to talk about. We're going to review March numbers. For me, I'll show you March numbers, money, record, everything. And we're going to look at year-to-date numbers as well. We're going to talk about the success we had with handicapping Major League Baseball preseason, which was pretty much all in March, as well as the NCAA tournament. Talk about some risk and reward, and also talk about the parallels between stock market and sports betting. A lot of parallels between both of those. Very fascinating. And I think more people have a better general understanding of the stock market than they do sports betting. And then we're going to look at some handicappers that are buried. And just to give you examples of, again, part of what I like to do is educate people on realistic expectations of what really happens in our industry. Majority of people, it's April the 8th. Yep. Majority of people are buried. And that's including professionals, recreational players. And when I say buried, they're down so deep that they're at the point where they're not going to recover. They're going to have a losing year. And it's only, the first quarter of the year. So show you some examples. Also going to finally wrap it up, talk about Major League Baseball, what I learned in the preseason and how I'm going to use that information and apply it to having a successful, profitable year. Finally, we made it. All right, we're basically up $1,000 in March. Our average bet size, very small at $244.19. You look at the overall record for March, it was positive. We hit 57%, 40 and 30 with 4 pushes, it's 57%. Now, the reason we wager so small, and I think this is very important, because when you see this, you would say, wow, you hit 57%. If you had wagered a significant amount more, you would have been extremely profitable. That is true. But in sports betting, we have to make all our decisions on the front end without seeing the end result. And I know that seems elementary and basic, but there's a lot of truth to that, meaning you have to make your decisions on risk. As far as money goes, you have to assess whether or not a play is a good wager before the game starts. We don't have the perspective of seeing the end result. And it's important to emphasize that, because when you see 40 and 30, like, wow, you hit 57%. That's really good. If you'd have wagered big, you'd have made a lot of money this month. That's true. But now we're looking at it from the final result. I mean, if I'd known we're going to hit 57%, I would have wagered, I would have tried to get $100,000 on a game, made $1 million and retired and shut the whole business down. But we don't have that perspective. And that's why this is an investment product, and you have to make, quote, good decisions on the front end. And that's why I don't have any regrets about how we handicapped the amount we wagered with baseball and NCAA basketball, because MLB, you go down here, you can see where it really good, 1,700. The record was 16 and 11. That's really positive. This was the first time I had ever wagered real dollars on preseason in a long time. I think in the years past, when I first started, maybe 2014, 15, I'd wagered some, but for the most part, I never wagered preseason. The model we were using, very successful, but we applied it to preseason, very successful. This is the point I'll make about assessing risk. Since we had never done that before, number one, that was new. But I felt strong about the model. So we did wager some. We just wagered real small. You can see we basically averaged, $264 a unit. So it was very, very conservative. And you look right below that, same deal with the NCAA tournament. That model was brand new for the tournament. The tournament's very difficult to handicap, but still we ended up going 11-6. So I don't have any regrets about doing that. Now, if we didn't wager anything, I probably would have regretted, because I felt good about the NCAA basketball model. It was similar to what we had done in college football and had a lot of success with. And considering the success we have with that model at the beginning of the year in NCAA basketball, I like that type of model. And it's something that we're going to start with in college football in the fall. So opening day for college football, we'll have a model, which is really cool. And that model did extremely well the first 3 weeks, and will be, I wouldn't say more aggressive, but we'll probably wager, normal amounts. It'll be greater than, $100 per game, but it had a lot of volume. It was maybe about 120 wagers through the first 3 weeks. But anyway, the point is, since all this was new, We still wagered. We were still profitable. And assessing our risk, I think we did the right thing, because let's look at the opposite side of that. MLB, we never wagered preseason before. The model for NCAA basketball was brand new. So factor in that. Let's say if we had wagered a significant amount and we'd have lost, I might be sitting here telling you, hey, we're in a hole $5,000 for the month of March, which would have not been good. And so when you're making decisions, there's a lot to consider, your edge, et cetera. January, we had a huge edge in NCAA basketball, more aggressive there. Same with NBA. So it's very simple to make a parallel to Billy Walters' book when he had all his plays categorized as a 5-star play, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star. So all these were like, a low risk play because we didn't have any data to support that this was going to work. So these were like 1-star plays, I guess. So we're wagering very little, but nonetheless, still profitable. And we'll dive over here and take a look at year-to-date numbers, which are really good. You can see there 11,400 amount earned, record 147 and 37, right at 52%, which is normally what I end up averaging throughout my sports betting career. We play a lot of underdogs, so majority of the time it's going to be right around there. But still, that's a really good average, averaging $3,800 per month. And then once we get started in baseball, we'll probably increase these units as well. Now, what I do want to show you, stop over here, take a look at the college basketball model. This thing did really well. It went 17-10, up 6 units. A national championship game line, our line was basically a pick. Nice little comeback there with Florida. And I know Houston was gutted. If you had Houston, that was really a tough bad beat, I guess you could say. Same with Duke as well. But anyway, yeah, and another reason why it's very difficult to handicap the basketball tournament when it gets deep. There's more edge early in the tournament. You can look there at 318, we went 1-0, 320, we went 5-4, 321, 6-1, 322, 3-1, and then 323 went 2-4. So the only losing day was that last day. And that was the only time the model indicated a play. After that, most of the games we had at a even or a pick. But still 17-10 with this model is very exciting. Understanding risk. When we come to the tournament next year, we will probably wager significantly more dollar-wise, because now we have a model that, number one, it's not a new model. It's a proven model, albeit only one season. So we'll probably increase the amount wagered next year. And this is a good lesson in how the business works. Because again, if we had wagered a significant amount of money, and I'm sitting here telling you we're $3,000 in a hole, most of you that are, quote, educated would say, why do we wager that much? Why do we risk that much if the model was new? So super excited about this model. And then let's go into, I know what I want to show you. Let's take a look at some of these handicappers. And I don't want to mention their name here on the podcast, but if you're watching it live, you can see this. And I've talked about this before at the beginning, is that the majority of people, even though it's April 8th, are absolutely buried. You can see this handicapper here who actually sells plays to the general public, minus 50.35 units, minus 50.35 units. You're not coming back from that. That's going to be a losing season. And we'll take a look at another handicapper that has a huge following that in essence is a losing sports bettor. NCAA tournament went 6-17, minus 19 units for March Madness. And I would say majority of people lost during the tournament. That's why the sports books advertise, huge for the tournament, because it's a huge profit center for majority of sports books that make a ton of money during March Madness. But on the consumer side, majority of people that wager on the tournament end up losing. And this was probably, I think, wise, maybe one of the best March Madness tournaments I have. I did have a year where I was close to almost 20 units for the entire tournament. But I had several years early in my career where we got absolutely destroyed. But anyway, feel good about that model, and show you one other screen here with regards to other handicappers. This is the account I follow that's very fascinating. I mentioned him before on the podcast, TR Handicap Tracker, and he tracks a very well-known company that has about 30 handicappers. And you could see here, same numbers I showed you for me, Their number one handicapper's up 10,600. Next one is 99.43. Next one's 67. And then everybody else drops to 29. So it's basically, if you were grading, this is sort of the old school way they did it. So if you say $1,000 is 1 unit, so they're basically up 2.9 units. And then the number one handicapper would be up 10.6 units. And making a comparison to me, we would be up 11.4 units. And then look, what's interesting, you have about 30 handicappers. Only 9 of these handicappers with this company are profitable. 9. So you have 2/3 of the handicappers that are, quote, advertised as professional handicappers are in the hole, March 31st in the hole. Worst Warren down 12, basically 13,000. The next one, 11,000. Next one, 8,000, 7,000, 7,000, 7,000, 6,000, 5,000, 5,000. Then it goes to 5,000, 4,900, 4,800, 4,400, 4,400. So again, the majority of people that wager on sports lose long term. And that's why any type of assessment you make on somebody, it has to be long term, minimum a month. And that's not to say that you're not going to have losing months. We had a losing month in February, winning month in March, winning month in January, but it is a very difficult business to profit. And regardless of what you hear or see, and I know this, I say this all the time, but I have to drive this point home, is that the majority of people, even if they advertise themselves as professionals, lose money long-term in this business. And just to confirm that this is a very difficult business, and without any framework of education and understanding of models, eye movement, etc., with no baseline of education, you cannot succeed in this industry long term. That's just a fact, the way it is. All right, next, and to wrap this up, I want to look at my power rankings for Major League Baseball for today. This is for 4-8. And if you remember, the way we did it last year, when I made the changes, the end of the year, what was extremely profitable, you're looking at the top 10. This is for today, April 8th. We played the top 6 teams only. But if any of the top 6 teams were playing any other team in the top 10, it would pass. We would pass. And the reason I did that, so if the 10th team was playing the 11th team, that would be a no play, right? And so worst case scenario, the 6th team would play the 11th team, and we still had a significant amount of margin to, quote, establish ourselves as saying we had positive EV for that particular play. That had a ton of success late. What we had a lot of success with early in the season, this is the reason why I brought this back last week to clients, was playing against the bottom 7. And this is called the play against concept. So if there's a correlation to winning for the top 10 teams via your model, then there should be a correlation to losing playing against the bottom teams. And you can see our bottom teams are White Sox, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Houston, Atlanta, Cincinnati, Texas. Top 10 model had a losing day yesterday. Bottom 7 has had 2 winning days. I haven't tracked this, but had a winning day yesterday, went 3-2. And what's interesting, we'll take a look at the lines. So in essence, to break this down in layman's terms, and you really need to understand the play against concept, because what can end up happening is it can be extremely profitable, because I think what you see early in the season, it's easier to recognize the, quote, good teams right now. Yankees, Chicago Cubs just moved up in our power rankings. St. Louis, Philadelphia, very easy to recognize those. What's difficult to recognize is sort of the middle to bottom teams, like who are the bad teams. And for example, from a bookmaking perspective, I'm not sure if I talked about this last week, but you look at the Miami Marlins were playing Atlanta. Atlanta was 0-6. Atlanta was in the bottom of our power rankings. They have been the whole season, but Atlanta was a -200 favorite. Marlins were +200. That would be an example of a play against. And you look at the lines today for these. Let's take a look at this. White Sox are playing Cleveland. Okay, Cleveland's -189. That would be a play on the run line if I played it to lower that juice. Minnesota is playing KC. KC won yesterday. And you only have to lay -112. And that's the whole premise behind the play against concept. Majority of time, you don't have to really risk that much. So we're only laying -112 against a team that has less than a 40% chance of winning. Next team, Pittsburgh, St. Louis. Pittsburgh won yesterday. Pittsburgh's got their ace on the mound. So you can get St. Louis playing against Pittsburgh for +122. So again, and the reason I said 40%, that's how I would model this. And let me see if I have the lines in here where you can actually see them. So we go over here to Minnesota. Yeah, you see Minnesota's line is plus 168. So that's less than a 40% chance of winning. See what the line is for Pittsburgh. Whoops, they're up here. Pittsburgh, we've got them. There we go. Plus 172 is my line for Pittsburgh. And we got St. Louis at minus 250. So a ton of value there. Let's take a look at Houston is playing Seattle. So we don't have to lay minus 106 against a, quote, bad team. Atlanta, Philadelphia, plus 100. Again, Atlanta has Chris Sale on the mound. But then Philadelphia has Wheeler, so you don't have to lay plus 100. So what I'm saying is early in the season, you can find a ton of value playing against these, quote, bad teams. Cincinnati, San Fran, I think Cincinnati won last night. You only have to lay minus 124. And then finally, Texas. Chicago blew out Texas last night. So this is a really good one. We have a quote, a top team playing a bottom team. So Cubs are like minus 150. Again, probably would play it on the run line. And then finally, I don't know if I showed this before, but I want to show you, we actually started the season last year playing the play against concept. And I want to show you the success we had. So again, going back to sort of a theme I talked about our concept I talked about earlier in the podcast, if you have limited data or you're doing something new, you want to risk very small. Well, the play against concept worked very well. May, it sort of crashed and burned in June, but it was still positive overall. Overall, it was about 10 units gained. But I want you to see where we peaked this at for the month of May. All of these games you're seeing here from last year is all from the play against concept. Exactly like I showed it, playing against the bottom 17s. We'll track it from, I didn't start, let me go back to here and show you the start date. All right, so you can see on the screen there, we started wagering on May the 13th. Y'all, we're so ahead. And that's another reason why I'm glad, because all that information we got with regards to preseason totals, which we're going to bring back Thursday now that we have a good sample size. But we didn't start wagering to May the 13th. Now, I want to show you how well this model did. May the 13th through May 13th. If y'all can see that on the screen on the bottom, look at that, y'all. 24.96 units, 24 units. And if you're new to the podcast, we grade one play as 1 unit. There's no 5-star plays. That's one play as 1 unit. So in order to do that, we're playing a significant amount of dogs. And if you go back to log, you can see it here. Plus 125, plus 150, 121, plus 145, plus 140, plus 120, plus 166. So you're getting a lot of these are dogs. Washington plus 150, 124. So a lot of money line dogs. And what I'm saying as far as the books, it's hard for the books to price the quote average teams versus the quote below average teams. So if you have a really good model, always consider or always track not only the top teams and where you're going to have the highest win percentage, whether it's the top 6, top 10, or however you're capping it. Also look at playing against the bottom 7, bottom 5, bottom 10, whatever, number that you test. And I think doing it that way, you can find a significant amount of value. And moving forward, and based on what I've seen so far, that's probably how we're going to start capping this here in the next few days, is just using the play against 7 against the bottom. Play against concept against the bottom 7 for like the first month, and then maybe transition into what we had a ton of success with later in the season, which was playing the top 6 teams. They're playing another top 10 team. It would simply be a pass. So anyway, great podcast. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in. Look for a lot more content coming out this week. And that's a wrap for episode 52 of the Underdog Sniper Podcast.